Hey, Clearview family, another midweek moment. I'm so excited to bring this one to you. I had lunch with somebody the other day and we were talking about what it's like to be in the middle of something. And the reality for life for every single one of us is that we find ourselves at a starting line, in the middle of something, and at a finish line simultaneously, and it's all different things. But when you reach a finish line, what winds up happening is you actually start something new from that moment. It's a natural progression in life as you hit a finish line and you start. And somewhere you find yourself, you've started it and the finish line is ahead of you and you're somewhere in the middle, and there's the tension between starting something and finishing it. And in the Bible, there's several stories that come to mind of Bible characters and illustrations for being in the middle, being stuck between two places. And so we can identify in three different ways, three different things and solutions for those when we're in the middle. And the first one I want to share with you comes with the Israelites in Exodus as Moses is leading the Israelites out of Egypt. They get to the point where they get to the Red Sea, and when they get to the sea, at this point they're grumbling, complaining, whining, and fussing because the Egyptians are coming after them. They're now at a point where they're in the middle. They have the sea in front of them, the Egyptians behind them coming after them. And here's the thing, God told Moses, he's like, I'm gonna harden Pharaoh's heart and he's gonna send everything he has after you. And some of you might feel like that today, where you feel like the enemy's just constantly attacking you and coming from all angles, and you're sitting in front of you going, I know that the promise of God was to get us out of Egypt and to the promised land, but I'm looking in front of me at this sea, and the sea is just so great in front of me, and there's no way for us to cross it on dry ground. There's no way to cross it that way. And God says to Moses, lift up your staff. He parts the sea, and the Israelites walk across on dry ground. And what happens is God gives a word to Moses. Moses is obedient, and the byproduct of that is the fulfillment of the word of God as Moses and the Israelites then make their way across the sea on dry ground. The Egyptians and Pharaoh's hardened heart, and they carry the same heart as their leader, pursue all of his chariots, all of his warriors, all of his men. They're all going after the Israelites through the Red Sea. And as the Israelites get to the other side, the Red Sea swallows them up. And as we think about that, I want you to see that if you are in the middle and you're sitting here going, I've got the enemy attacking from all sides and I've got this big sea in front of me, I don't know how I'm going to get to the other side of what I'm facing, and I can't stand being right here in the middle. You need to hear God, get into his word, get into your prayer closet, and then be obedient. A second story along those lines has to do with David. And David is a shepherd boy being sent out to the battlefield. And here's one of the things. Saul is there, and Saul as king is standing there listening to Goliath, this giant, mock God. The warriors and the battle and the army is hearing Goliath mock God. And in the process of all of this, David, the shepherd boy, comes out and he sees that the Israelites are in the middle, and he finds himself then in the middle because he hears Goliath and he sees the Israelites. He knows who God is and what they're doing. In the process of all of that, David looks at them and says, who's this guy that he's going to get to mock our God? And if you know the story, then you know that David looks at Saul and he goes, I can't wear your armor. I've got God who has already delivered the lion and the bear, and he'll deliver this giant. And he walks out and he takes down Goliath. And so some of you are approaching a situation where you're sitting here going, I find myself now in the middle because this is happening over here and this is happening over here. And here's what David did. He was confident in who he was and who God was and how God had already done so many things. And he walked with that same confidence, knowing that God delivered lion and bear as a shepherd boy into his hands to protect his sheep, that God would also deliver this giant who wanted to take out the Israelites. And he mocked the Israelites. And so David takes him out. He finds himself in the middle. He knows who he is. He knows what he's supposed to do because he knows who God is and God's plan. The third one, very simply, is this. Peter and the disciples find themselves on a boat, and a storm is out at sea, and they hear somebody calling out. And Peter asks, is it you, Lord? And then Peter gets out of the boat. And here's the thing. Peter now finds himself in the middle. Do I get out of the boat? Do I stay in the boat? And we know from the story that Peter gets out of the boat. He begins to walk on water towards Jesus. But in a moment, the storm around him becomes so big that he takes his eyes off of Jesus and he stares at the storm around him. And when he fixates on the storm around him, he begins to sink and begins to drown until Jesus comes over and pulls him out. And when you're in the middle of a storm and you left the security of the boat and you're walking towards Jesus, the best thing you can do is keep your eyes on Jesus, the author and perfecter of your faith. So when you find yourself in the middle, hear from the Lord, get into your prayer closet, be obedient, remind yourself of who God is, what he has done, and walk faithfully forward. And lastly, keep your eyes fixed on Jesus the entire time that you're in the middle so that you can win the race and arrive at the finish line.